Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Alex Douzet of Pumpkin. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, pleasure to joining you on this podcast.
So, to kick things off, I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, I'm sure as you can tell from my accent, I wasn't born in the US, so this is not an American accent. I was born and raised in France.
Hmm.
I grew up in the eastern part of France, in a region that's called the Alsace near Germany.
Hmm.
I went to school all the way through college in France, and I actually moved to the US right after I graduated college. So one of the interesting part of my experience is while I was educated in France, I actually have never worked a full time job
Hmm.
in the country. All my full time work, career, education, practice has been here in the United States.
Wow. I mean, just out of curiosity, what drove you to come to the U.S. then at that time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I graduated college in 1996. I went to grad school in the US. I went to NYU, and then subsequent to that, I went to business school. I went back to Europe in a school called INSEAD to get my MBA. But in the 90s, when I was going through college, because I was studying econ, business, and law, um, just looking at this is kind of pre-EU, but you could look at the emergence of like where things were going to go. You could see that this trend of globalization and the fact that business was going to become more and more international, and there was a need to practice and be able to be fluent in languages, especially English. Like English was becoming very prevalent across the EU as the language for business. And so for
Hmm.
me, I felt like I didn't grow up in a privileged family where, we were traveling a lot and I got to expose to a lot of languages. And I just felt that I needed to really improve my level of English. I did fine at school, but I just don't find that languages it's a thing that you learn in the classroom.
Hmm.
So while I was at college, I came to the US every summer to work different kind of job. I started like on the low end. Like my first summer, I went to North Carolina and I worked in fast food restaurants, just kind of the lowest level job I could find just to get some experience. And then gradually worked my way up where I did internships that were a little more serious. And then my last job at the end of college, I worked for an airline company, Air France, in
Hmm.
their marketing analysis department here in New York City. And that was really kind of like what got me started on my career in the
Hmm.
US because I never returned to France. I graduated, but I really joined a startup post that. And for some reason, every time I kind of looked at doing something else than working in New York, there was a force magically that just kept me in New York City.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, kicking off your career in the marketing side, there was kind of that spark that had you stay in New York. What did that career journey look like? How long were you at that company? I know you were an entrepreneur, different startups early
Yeah.
on, but what did that transition look like?
So what was interesting is while I was at college, to get some more practical experience, I actually co-founded two businesses, not at the same time. Subsequent, so my first 2 years, I had a small company that was basically providing on campus, or so job to the students were on the campus, but the job was off campus.
Mm.
And then my second company was much more in the sports marketing arena. Very small businesses, but it was a great experience for me to really get my hands going on learning the world of business, but also just learning some basic leadership skills and what it takes to build a business and what are the challenges. And quite
Mm.
frankly, I had a phenomenal experience. Those were not great businesses, but I had a phenomenal experience. But when I graduated, I realized, look, while I had this aspiration to become an entrepreneur at some point, because I had that sort of that inch inside of me, it's like I got to do this. I also was a little bit realistic to say I need coaching, I need experience, I need to learn from others, and so I focused my first 6-7 years to work for someone else. So
Mm.
post my time interning at Air France, I worked for a small startup for about 2 years. And then I kind of went back and forth. Subsequent to that, I worked for a big media company. So I was in the music space, a company called BMG Music,
Yep.
owned by a German group. but they own like multiple record labels. And one of the things that they owned was the largest music club in the US.
Wow.
It was that model that doesn't exist anymore. This is pre sort of iTunes and Spotify, but
Mm,
essentially they were the largest distributor of direct to consumer music play. And they had a unique advantage because they own the record label and
mm,
that they own the customer, so they could go straight to the consumer. It was one of those deals where you sign up, they were giving you X amount of CDs for free, and we're talking like pre-digital music, so we're still dealing with CDs,
yep.
and shipping to you through the mail. And we were working the offer to figure out what is the right customer acquisition
Mm,
strategy based on your profile and where you live and what kind of genre of music you like. So if you're more of a classical guy, then maybe we can afford to you maybe a more upscale as a consumer. We give you like more upfront and less on the back end. And maybe if
mm,
you were like more, a young person liking like hip hop and R&Bs, maybe we tested the water. We give you a couple CDs and see if you buy more, and then we'll give you more on the back end. So that was very formative
interesting.
as a training for me. I did that for a couple of years, and obviously late 90s, the internet was booming, and I was like, look, I got to be part of this revolution. So I joined in late 1999 a company called Hot Jobs, and Hot
Mm,
Jobs was one of the primary internet websites for jobs, competing with brands like Monster and a few others. And it was
yep.
publicly traded. It had just gone public, so I joined the company post IPO. Phenomenal experience. I actually became, through that experience, at one point Google #1 customers in 2000,
Wow.
and
Wow.
this was pre me going back to business school. So I worked there for a couple of years. Ultimately, the company was acquired by Yahoo in 2001. I resigned from my role, went to B school, thinking of I'm going to become an investment banker. I'm going to go into finance and do investment banking.
Yep.
Joined the top MBA, like INSEAD is one of the top business school in the world. Went to London for the summer, working in investment banking, working for Citigroup, Salmon Brother, doing M&A in London. Tough time, recession time.
Mm,
Loved the work, hated the culture.
yeah.
Absolutely hated the culture, and realized I can do the job, I can be great at it, but I do not want to spend my full time doing this type of work. So
Yep.
post graduating, I decided this is not for me. I came back to New York, was looking at different opportunities, and because I had good relationship with people at Google, I was actually went back to them and said, "Hey, look, I'd be interesting to do some work with you guys." I knew Tim Armstrong at the time, who was the head of like all the media businesses, and they offered me a role at Google to
Mm,
basically help them to develop a first version of what became AdSense and try to
wow.
expand that through media properties in Europe. But
Mm,
ultimately, I turned down the opportunity, and this is Google pre-IPO. When we're
yeah, that's
talking like
crazy.
2002,
Wow.
2002, 2003 timeframe. And the reason why I turned down the offer is because a couple of former colleagues of mine from Hot Jobs, we got back together, we're brainstorming some idea, and we kind of landed on what became my first journey. So this idea became what became my first company, The Ladders. So
Mhm.
I essentially turned on the Google offer to not work with them, but to actually start my own company.
Incredible. I mean, I've done some research on that, and the ladders. It's kind of like a similar venture you worked prior, which is job hunting, job sourcing. So what inspired that?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So the inspiration and insight for ladders was we were really fortunate because the work we done at Hot Jobs, we had
Yeah.
observed something. There was a problem statement that we were addressing with ladders. And essentially the problem was the following. So one of the great thing about, the V1 version of the job sites on the web, the Monster, the Hot Jobs of the world, they were really competing with newspaper, right? Newspaper classified advertising for jobs in the late 90s were dominated by newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, you know, Tribune, all those guys.
Mhm.
And for a small line of advertising, probably, 200 character, you had to pay $1,000 for an ad that would basically run on the New York Times for,
Mm.
a few days. And
Yep.
hopefully you get a bunch of resumes from that.
Yep.
What we did with technology is basically creating abundance, right? No restriction on the quantity of text and messages you can create, very large scale distribution. and at a lower price, a fraction. So if another New York Times costs $1,000, maybe a job posting on Hot Jobs was $150. So great,
Mm,
really scaled the business, did really well, but it came with a byproduct and a new challenge. Now, as candidates and professionals migrated to that style of job application, we saw one of the challenge was overly spamming applications. Right. So a job posting, especially the more senior the role was, the more applicants they would get, but also 95% would be completely unqualified.
got it.
You basically had this version of like a lottery. People saying, whoa, a CFO job, a CMO job, a $300,000 job. Why not? The cost of applying is a click. Why not just try? Maybe if I get lucky, I get it. Right.
Yeah.
And that really kind of spammed the experience and was really creating a poor experience for recruiter and employers.
Mm,
So we came up with a solution to that for ladders. Basically our model was reverse the model, make it a candidate pay model, employers free, so that only the qualified candidates will actually be willing to pay the cover charge to join the network. And then you
mm,
let the employers to post their job for free. So essentially you can aggregate the largest network of job employment for what we had called at the time, it was a branding call, was $100,000 plus jobs.
yep.
At the time there was also like 6-figure jobs, and it was essentially what you could define as professional or executive type of roles. And
Yep.
that was really the positioning for the latter. And that's how we got started in late 2003.
Wow. It's incredible. I mean, one of the stats I saw was just at launch from zero and just in 3 years, around 1.3 million members, which is absurd. I would love to hear what do you think the incentive was to draw that spike and the interest for members to join?
Yeah, I mean, I think our timing was great. Right? I think two things that went great about the ladders, but things that didn't go so well. We were super early. I think our timing was right. As I think of as an entrepreneur, one of the big challenges with an entrepreneur is your timing. It's not great to be
Mm,
too early, and it's not great to be late. You kind of want to
yep.
find your right timing. And I usually use the analogy of surfing. Is it's a
Mm,
wave. You have to paddle and you have to catch that wave. And I don't know if you ever surf. I surf a little bit. It's extremely
yeah.
hard. It's all about timing. You got to read the wave very well, and you got to time it. Sometimes you catch the wave, and sometimes the wave just passes you by.
Mm,
Entrepreneurship is a little bit like that. And I think in the case of Ladder, we were fortunate. 2003, you know, I don't know how much you remember that time, but it was post Web 1.0
mm,
wave. The market
yep.
had crashed. The internet ecosystem had been completely disseminated. There was a
Mm,
ton of businesses that went bankrupt, that lost a lot of money to investors. And we were coming up with V2. We were basically one of the first startup in the New York ecosystem, part of like what you may call like Web 2.0.
yep.
And so our timing was great. And we enjoyed this. And we came out of this before LinkedIn. LinkedIn came out maybe a year after we started Ladders.
Mhm,
They became really, it was until like 2000, 2009 that LinkedIn became prominent in jobs. So for a long
mm,
time, we were the only game in town. And so
mm,
supply and demand sort of came to us organically. And that was
yeah.
the driver of our success. Post the 2009 recession, things got a little bit tougher. Right?
Mm,
Our
yeah.
model got disrupted. There was more competition, rise of companies like Indeed and Glassdoor, and on LinkedIn becoming very, very strong and prominent. And things started to get a little tougher for us
Mm,
as a result. And we also made a couple execution blunder that didn't really help along the journey.
mm. I think what's interesting is we'll see the evolution of your story is subscription based. So starting out with the ladders and then Ollie and then Pumpkin, getting into animals and like dogs. Where does that come into play? I'm sure the listeners are curious. So you're on this tech side, subscription base. You're coming out of the ladders, and then you get into Ollie. What
Yeah,
what sparks that?
yeah. I mean, not gonna lie, it was my dog. I rescued a dog. So you fast forward, 2015. So maybe I answer before answering your question. I'll give you just a little transition. So I
Yep.
stayed with Ladders for about 10 years. Eventually exited the opportunities in 2013, 2014. Was not as big of an exit as we were hoping to. And I had done Ladders and Hot Jobs. And so at that point, I was like, look, I'm kind of done with the job space. I want to do something else. I want to explore
Mm,
other avenues. And well, I wasn't sure what it was going to be. So it took me a year to find what I was going to do next and be really serious about it. And
Yep.
that inspiration came out of a personal experience with my dog. At that point, I had kids. My wife and I had talked about, the kids are old enough that we can have a dog. Because I'm sure, I don't know if you have kids, but when you have kids
Yep.
under the age of 5, it's so chaotic. And I had twins.
Oh,
So I
wow.
had twin daughters. I was not
Wow.
going to have a dog and twin daughters on the age of 5. Just wasn't going to happen. And I live in New York City. I have an apartment, but New York City apartments are small.
Yep.
So I waited a bit long, and so I rescued this dog. And I grew up with pets. I love pets, and I have a family who come from a background of farming. So I always have a passion and love for animals. But I actually never grew up with dogs. So I never had the experience of raising a dog. And so
Mm.
we get this dog, and I'm thinking, okay, this is great. I'm just going to go to a local store in my neighborhood to figure out what I need to feed this dog. I want to buy a premium product. You fast forward a few months, my dog gains a lot of weight,
Mm.
and she's having morning sickness, digestive mostly problem. So I go see a specialist to understand what's the problem, what's going on. And through that experience, working with a specialty veterinarian who had a PhD in animal nutrition, they sort of opened my eyes to what really was happening, and which I was totally, unaware of, is the
Yep.
fact that the pet food industry is not what they claim it is. The quality is extremely
Mm.
poor, extremely low, and there's an epidemic of disease, obesity, cancer,
Mm.
tumor with pets, dogs and cats, and a lot of it has to do with nutrition and the food and the quality and the quantity. And so what I
Mm.
learned from the experience gave me the insight to go and create Ollie. But the
Mm.
reality is the journey was not like a straight line,
Yeah.
because this is complex. Right? What I ended up doing with Ollie eventually was combining multiple skills and different expertise that I didn't have. I
Mm.
ultimately created a brand of fresh, natural, human grade quality dog food that is personalized to a dog's profile, so we can do the portioning properly so we maintain their ideal weight.
Mhm.
And it is cooked, flash frozen, so it's a fresh product, and it ships directly to consumer. So now
Mm.
I have to do a form of food that has never been done. Nobody has found a way to make this product at scale. There's no
Yeah.
expertise on that. I want to make it in a human facility so that I can claim the USDA human grade quality statement, which is not an easy thing to do, because I have to convince a co-packer who makes human food to let me in to do make dog food.
Yep.
And the cooking methodology will have an impact on the output are not in. So what I would describe is, in the early day, the way we were making the food was a really, I'm trying to be gentle here, but it was very artisanal. Right? Let's go
Mm.
to it. It was not high frequency, high scale production, really well thought through. And then you have to make it safe so that you don't really create any issue for the dog. It's got to taste well, and it has to
Mm.
be balanced. So you
Yeah.
need food nutritionists who know how to balance a diet, but nobody has ever created a balanced diet for this type of food. So there was a lot of
Mm.
complexity. And then the last part was, when going straight to consumer, this is a fresh product. So now I have to reach my consumer nationwide, and this is a perishable product. I have to
Yeah.
find a way to get in the hands of consumer at home in every state, and I'm dealing with different climates, especially in the summer.
Mm.
I have Texas and Florida, were extremely hot and extremely humid. And then I have maybe northern states where it's more mild and temperate. Or in the winter, it's easy because, everything is cold, but then you're dealing with weather climate. So there was a lot of
Mm.
logistic complexity to this business.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, when I looked at all the skills that were needed and my skill sets, I started to doubt myself and say, what business? I know I'm a successful entrepreneur. I built one company, but it was mostly a tech company. And yes,
Yeah.
Ollie had a tech element, but it was not the majority of what you need to do. So now
Yeah.
I'm looking at this like, am I like really full of myself? Am I way ahead of my skis here? Like, what business, what claims do I have to pretend that I can be this founder in this product category that which I know absolutely nothing of? All right.
Mm.
So I had to go over those concerns and really get myself an education on steroids, like super, super high speed. So
Yeah.
going from ideation to actually commercial launch, that was roughly an 18 months journey.
I believe it. I mean, launching in such a different category from your tech experience prior, I mean, that comes with no easy lift. What did the team look like at launch? I mean, yourself, I know, co-founder, nutritionist. What did that look like
Yeah,
to
so
launch?
I created a team. We had essentially like two, three co-founders.
Yep.
People, what the common theme among my co-founders and I were passion for pets. I think the story, the vision really resonate with all of us. Um, from the technical standpoint, the nutrition supply chain, core supply chain, we really lean on consultants, right? And we really spend a lot of time doing what I call like triangulating, like calling a lot of people, learning from them, sort of
Mhm.
paying them for advice, trial and error, and narrow down where is the Venn diagram or the sweet spot between different skill sets and expertise. Because again, it was not one source of person that could go and say, oh yeah, you know it all.
Yeah.
We really had to triangulate. So it was a lot of research, a lot of consultant, find on who's real, who's not real, and then experiment. Try. The R&D cycle was long. We spent a lot of time in R&D. We struggle a lot on R&D.
Mm,
But one thing we were not willing to compromise was quality and safety. So
yeah.
we invested a lot of money. I think this is where my expertise and my experience as a prior entrepreneur was really helpful.
Mm,
I was able to raise a fair amount of money relatively quickly based on the fact that I was a serial entrepreneur, a two-time founder. I think that gave me a path to market with investors that was faster than if I was a first-time entrepreneur.
yep.
And because we had raised more capital, we could go faster and experiment faster, fail fast, improve, pivot, learn, improve, progress, move on. Right?
Yep.
That's our approach. And so that was really the first 18 months journey that got us from, let's call it an idea on paper or on a napkin to,
Mm,
oh, now we actually have a product. We really need to take open, we open for business. We can take consumer and support them with a real product that we feel comfortable. And like the statement was, we all had our pets on the product, right? So
mm,
we were the first beta tester, and we went for a period of time where we had maybe 50 pets on the product constantly every week, eating it and getting feedback and making improvement before we were comfortable feeding anyone that we didn't really know, and because we knew things were going to go wrong, right? There were
yeah.
definitely issues that we had to work through, and we did. And
Mm,
so when we had a commercial launch, things started to like really take off because I think I'm trying to remember year one, we got to 1 million in revenue probably within 9 months.
wow.
Got to a 3 million run rate within probably 14 months,
Wow.
and achieved 10 million plus within the first 24 months of the business. So our
That's
timing
incredible.
was great. The thing that was really good and that gave me confidence, good. The challenge I was having with that product was, okay, let's. Do you have a dog by anyway? You have a dog. I
I
mean,
do. I
oh,
do actually have a dog, 5 months old. Yep.
5 months old. How big is your dog?
He's about 18 pounds right now.
Okay, 18 pounds. I'm not going to ask you what you spend, what kind of product you buy. That's for you to figure out. But like, let's say you spend $50 a month to feed your dog. What's his name?
Sam, mini
Sam.
Bernedoodle.
All right, so Sam the Doodle, right? So you're spending $50 a month to feed Sam, and let's say you're doing a standard middle of the road dry food from like Purina or something like that. Now you're like, oh man, I just talked to Alex and I learned this product called Ollie. I want to switch out. I want to do a better product for Sam because I love him and he deserves better.
Yep.
Well, you're going to switch to Ollie, you may have to spend on $125 a month. So it's a meaningful step up, right? I'm not going to
Yep.
lie about it. It's a premium product. It's a great product, but it's to deliver a better experience. You got to spend up. The biggest pushback I got from investors in the early days were, we love the idea, we love the space, we think pets category is a great category, very resilient. We really big believer in that, but we hate your unit economics. We
Mm,
think that the better product should be 30% cheaper than the incumbent. Yeah, I'm
mm,
like, yeah, but this category doesn't work. And everybody felt like, look, the consumer never going to go for it. It's never going to scale. You're going to be a niche product.
yep.
And the margin initially were bad. Like all margins were just really, really rough, right?
Yeah.
Because a food product you scale and you improve margin and unit economics with scale. And
Yep.
so there was a big leap of faith of like, consumer going to go for it, and is this going to scale? So those were pretty big hurdle with investor. We struggled a good amount with that, but ultimately what made Ollie really works, because look, I'm not going to give you financial. I'm still an investor. Company is doing phenomenally well. We
Yep.
are number 2 in the category US. This is like hundreds of million in revenue,
Incredible.
profitable. I mean, just great success story. Like 8 years, 9 years later.
Wow.
But the real struggle was getting investors to believe in it. What eventually worked is the fact that you have pet owners, and you might be one of them, who truly see themselves as like pet parents, and to have a better relationship with their pets and a longer relationship with the pet, they're willing to invest. They're willing to spend up.
Mm.
They're willing to pull the credit card and spend money. And
Yep.
that is what made the category work. Right? In
Mm.
2015, when I came up with the idea, $0 was being spent on fresh natural food in the US.
Mm.
Today, there are probably 6, 7 different type of products, all with a different variants. The category is north of like $1.5 billion in sales, and
Wow.
is growing at 30%. When pet food is growing at 1 to 2% year on year, the category
Mm.
in which Ollie and a few others are
Yep.
is growing at 30% year over year, right?
That's
And
incredible.
it's all driven by what I would call like a secular trend of pet lovers who just are willing, pets are part of the family, and they're like children, and they're willing to invest to have a longer relationship with
Mm.
that pet because they love it so much, right? And so
Mm.
that was really a thesis back in
Yep.
2015. It was a sell. I had to sell. There was no data to really back me up.
Yep.
And I would say 9 out of 10 VC didn't buy it, but the few ones who bought it made the right bet, because today they are doing
Mm.
really well with the company.
Wow. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2015, you guys must have been a trailblazer in D2C for dog and pet food. Uh, What was that like, convincing consumers to switch over? I mean, conventionally, they might go to the store, grab a bag on their way out, um, but also being human grade, but also D2C at the same time. The run rate you guys had is incredible.
Yeah, and there was a few things that you had to figure out. The biggest part was the food. To make the experience work, you have to store it partially in your fridge. So we designed we realized right away, is like, hey man, if you have a big dog, we're gonna be crawling your fridge, and that's gonna be a real problem. There will
Mm.
be no food for you. The dog's gonna take over the fridge. And we,
Yeah.
we came up with all kinds of crazy ideas, like, oh yeah, we're gonna offer people a fridge just for the dog. It's like, okay, that's not gonna scale. That's not gonna work. Eventually, we landed on the concept to say, we're going to ship frozen, because if neutralize the product, it make it shelf stable longer. It's an easier experience. It makes it easier to transport from our warehouse to the doorstep.
Mm.
And the consumer can store in the freezer, and then take some package one by one, put in the fridge, let it thaw,
Mm.
and then serve that. Because once the product is thawed, you only get a 5 to 6 day shelf life. So
Yep.
so we had to train consumer a little bit on that switch. Everybody was worried. It's like, oh my God, this is going to be a big ask. Turned
Yeah.
out to be not so much of a big ask for consumer. Consumer got it relatively quickly, and they were able to make that switch and adapt to the
Mm.
experience. One thing that we had to do probably 18 months into our journey is completely redesign the packaging. The
Yep.
packaging, we were having a lot of problem with it. We were unhappy. We were not getting good customer feedback. It was creating retention issue. So we invested like $2-3 million in completely redesigning the experience. And the
Mm.
packaging that we still have today is the one that I designed with my team and my co-founder back in 2017-18, and a
Incredible.
phenomenal experience. And then we literally made the product what I call like bulletproof or idiot proof. Like, there's no
Mm.
way you can get it wrong, and it's so
Yeah.
customized that, like, you get a pouch, you open it, you put in the bowl. It's so easy. I think that's the real
Mm.
recipe behind the success of the brand and the experience.
Mm. It's incredible. At what point was your transition out of Alley and then into Pumpkin? Was that around COVID, post COVID? I would love
It,
to
it, was-
hear what that was like
it was pre-COVID, so a couple
pre COVID.
things happened with that experience. So one of the thing is, one of my early investor in not Ollie, in ladders, a guy named Kevin Ryan. The name may speaks to you. He's a really, really successful entrepreneur here in New
Mhm.
York City. Has built tremendous brand. I mean, he's behind Guilt,
Yeah.
Business Insider, MongoDB, Zola. I mean, the list goes on,
Mm.
and he's a phenomenal guy. So it turns out both he and I graduated the same business school, so we both went to INSEAD. And when I was at Hot Job, he was the CEO of DoubleClick, and he was on the
Mm.
board of Hot Job. So that's how I got to know him, and we became friends. And he was my lead investor in when I started Ladders, because he knew Hot Jobs believe in the model and the first guy to write a check for the business.
Wow.
So he acted a little bit of like a mentor. And one of the things that he told me as sort of feedback when I left Ladders was like, "Look, Alex, you stayed there too long.
Mm.
Appreciate you have great tenacity, but I spent 11 years of my life, and the feedback and looking back was like, I probably stayed there too long. Probably 3 to 4 years too long. Right? I should
Mm.
have probably left sooner." So I took that to heart, and I really thought through it. And as I was building Ollie, one of the challenge was the next phase of scaling the business was really scaling manufacturing. Like
Mm.
what was going to make, I ran Ollie until we were probably a $30 to $40 million business.
Yeah.
The first four years. But what was going to take us to the next level were not technology challenge. They were not data challenge. They were not go-to-market strategy challenge. They were food safety, manufacturing, logistic challenge. The
Yep.
interesting challenge just doesn't happen to be the kind of challenge I'm passionate about. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think the combo of that and the feedback I got from Kevin made me really look back and say, maybe I should not hang out too long. Maybe I should transition the business over to somebody else, stay on the
Mm.
board for a while, and then ultimately just become an investor owner on the side. And
Mm.
around the moment I was going through that reflection, I also was looking at the overall just pet ecosystem, the pet tech system, and
Yep.
noticed that pet insurance was something that was rising and that was drastically underpenetrated in the US.
Mm.
To give you a sense, 165 million pets in the US, but about 100 million pets go see a vet, let's call it every 18 months, right? At least.
Yeah.
So the term I'm using for those guys is medicalized pets. And that is the
Mm.
market that we address with pet insurance. Back in 2019, less than 2% of pets who are medicalized, go see a vet, had coverage with a pet insurance.
Mm.
When I looked at market overseas, which is one of the really unique situations, usually the US in every single category leads every foreign market. This happened to be an exception where foreign markets were ahead of us and more mature. UK
Yep.
was a great example. The UK market had a 25 to 30% market penetration. So
Wow.
I looked at it and said, wow, if the US gets there, this is going to be an enormous market. And
Yeah.
back in 2019, there were only 8 different providers of pet insurance in the US. And one of the things that was really lacking was a lack of coverage for all kinds of conditions, so more premium comprehensive product, and a
Mhm.
lack of engagement from the veterinary community to advocate for the benefit of pet insurance. Where in the UK, vets were very involved with pet insurance and really advocating the benefit to their patients. And that is where I was like, "Ooh, there's an opportunity there." Now, at the same time, I was going through that journey and kind of doing that research. A friend of mine had someone that he knew who was working at a consulting firm and advising a big client in the pharma space.
Mhm.
And turns out they were thinking about a pet insurance product. That company turned out to be a company called Zoetis. It's a world leader in animal health.
Mm.
Um, and they wanted to bring a new concept of pet insurance to the market because they wanted to support their core clients, who are veterinarians, uh, continue to practice the gold standard of care, stay in the exam room, and continue to do well.
Yep.
The challenge they were facing is, and you can probably empathize with this, is like Fortune 500 companies are not a breeding ground for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
If you want to work your way up at a Fortune 500 company, the way you get there is you end up running the biggest P&L.
Yeah.
You don't go and say, "Oh, I'm going to bet all my career on this very obscure concept that has 99% chance of failing, and that's how I want to work my way to become a senior executive of this company." That is just not the way to do it. It's
Yep.
it's a, it's a relatively risk averse environment. It's just not just Zoetis, you take any Fortune 500 company, eventually they work their way to become extremely risk averse.
Yeah.
And they knew that, and they were not, not fool about this. So they realized we still committed to do this, but we can't do it with anybody internally. So we need to find someone else to do this, and we like to partner with someone who has a track record. And that's
Mm.
where I came to the picture. I was introduced to the company. We spoke, took some time to align on the vision and the direction of how we're going to do this. But ultimately agreed that the right way to do this was not to put this inside the four walls of Zoetis, but to treat it as a true startup incubation where Zoetis was going to act as the lead investors, was going to have some protection from a control standpoint and a governance standpoint, but we were going to be free to execute as fast as we can and do it the way we wanted to do. We were not going to be told what to do.
Mm.
Right? And that is what we did. And so our timing turned out to be, again, pretty good, because
Yeah.
I joined full time as the founding CEO in the spring summer of 2019. We launched commercially. We launched in the fall of 2019 a beta pilot program with a few clinics in a few states to validate our assumptions, and then we decided to go full commercial across 50 states with our offer April of 2020. Now that
Wow.
was a really interesting timing because
Yeah.
it's not COVID. We were in lockdown. Everybody's at home. Nobody's launching a business. And we're like, whoa, we're going to do this. We are going to be the one company that's going to launch a business. And I was like, we either bright and very passionate and believe in ourselves, or we are complete idiots and we're going to fail miserably.
Yeah.
We were extremely fortunate that with COVID, there was just a rush of pet adoptions, and
Mm.
health and wellness and healthcare was up on everybody's mind. And that gave a really, really big boost to pet insurance as a category, and to us as a new entrant, making a lot of noise in the space to say
Mm.
we're the new breed of pet insurance in the US.
That's incredible. I mean, launching out, how would you convince new pet owners to switch over? Like, what nationwide, what did that relationship look like with a vet, say, like a local vet
Yeah. So,
onboarding?
so great question. And I think this is very different than what we did at Ollie. In pet food, you're trying to convince pet owners to switch their dog from brand A to brand B.
Yeah.
Pet insurance is actually not the case whatsoever. That's not the battle. If you have a pet and you're already insured by Nationwide, or you're insured with another brand, I'm going to be, stay there, buddy. It's great that you have pet insurance. But the truth is, if you leave your current coverage and you switch to another brand, most likely we won't be able to protect you against pre-existing conditions,
Mm.
and you're gonna get lesser coverage as a result. The key formula and the key strategy was it's all about young pets.
Mm.
And as a result, we see this: 75% of pets we insured and we underwrite for the first time, they're below the age of 4. So
Mm.
for us, it was like the battleground is not trying to convince someone who's got a pet insurance somewhere else. Like, we're going after non-consumption and we're going after new pets, young
Mm.
kittens and puppies. That's where the success is going to be. And in our journey, we really focus on our relationship with Zoetis to align with veterinarians and try to engage vet clinics to be a partner and a very strong advocate of a concept. Because look, when you're adopting a puppy or a kitten, you have to do a vet visit, right? Within
Yeah.
a few days of adoptions, you gotta go make sure that that pet is getting their shots. They have a wellness visits so that the vet can look at them, make sure they're healthy, there's no issue. And so
Yeah.
there is a great time in that journey to say, hey, have you thought about pet insurance? Because you just got a French bulldog, and these
Mm.
little guys can have a lot of issues, especially when they're going to be older, and you want to be protected to ensure they can get the care that they deserve. And so it's
Yep.
a very contextual conversation. It makes sense. And that's what we focus on at Pumpkin.
Mm. So just launching right in the peak of COVID, so the April 2020, what did that transition look like as COVID, I mean, spiked fall 2020, 2021 continued? What did that consumer base look like for you guys?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's interesting because, maybe it's luck, maybe it's talent, and maybe it's experience. I don't know. I can't really say that. But my first company, Ladders, right? Year one, we did $1 million in revenue. Year two, 7. Year three, we were close to like 20 million.
Mhm.
I do Ollie year one, same, close to $1 million. Year two, we go to 10 million. Year three, we're north of 20 million.
Wow.
Pumpkin, year one, we do 1 million. Year two, we do 16 million.
Wow.
Year three, we had 36 million.
It's incredible.
A rocket ship,
Yeah.
complete, absolute rocket ship. Right. Part of it is great product, great timing, right place, right time. Part of it is
Yeah.
again execution. Look, one thing that I was able to do, and it's a recurring story. Ladders, it was a bootstrap business. My
Yeah.
co-founders and I raised a total of roughly 20 million. In
Mm.
the world of venture, it's really what you put in the category of like bootstrapping.
Yep.
Ollie, a much more capital intensive business, I ended up raising close to 100 million for it.
Wow.
Pumpkin, probably by the time we're done, we will have spent 120, 130 million to build the business, right?
Yep.
And when I shook hands on and signed on the dotted line with Zoetis, I told them, listen, I don't know much about pet insurance, but I know about building businesses and I know the pet space. I'm just telling you, if you're not committed to invest $75 million, I am not your guy. Go do this with somebody else because I'm not going to waste my time here. It will be a waste of time. And
Yeah.
and I was accurate. We did a transaction about a year ago where a company called JAB came in and bought a big ownership of Pumpkin away from Zoetis. And
Mhm.
they're still supporting us financially because we're not profitable just yet. But when we did that transition sort of 5 years into the journey, guess what? Yeah, we had spent roughly between 70 and $80 million already. Right.
Yeah.
So I wasn't totally off. But the benefit of that is, it took me some time, but my track record spoke for me. So it made the guys at Zoetis confident. Okay, right business, right time, right team. I had more resource at my disposal early on, which means I could go faster. I built a great
Mm.
team. The leadership team I have ladders. I'm sorry, at the Pumpkin,
Yep.
best team I ever worked with, right? And
Mm.
the guys that I hire and girls that I hire with me 5 years ago to join me on this journey, they're still working with me today, right?
Love it.
And so that's a really true testament of like we did it the right way, and doing it the right way meant we executed the way that we were not executing the prior businesses. We
Yeah.
went from 0 to 100 extremely fast, very
Mm.
laser focused, deploying capital because we had capital, and deploying capital the right way into the right initiatives. And that the way the best testament of this is looking at the scorecard. Like we
Mm.
grew this business really, really, really fast. It was a rocket ship.
Yeah. To the listeners out there, what does that onboarding experience look like if someone was to go get their pet onto Pumpkin? What does that user-friendly kind of
Yeah.
experience look like?
I mean, the beauty of this is like, we are not like the other insurance business. It's not like an agent business where you have to talk to a human. I mean, look, if you're someone who you need to talk to an agent, we have a team of customer experts that are licensed insurance agents that can walk you through every ins and out of our product and our coverage. But
Mhm.
the reality, 90% plus of our customers sign up on our website, right?
Yeah.
They hear about the brand, mostly today by talking to their vets, and their vets
Mhm.
are the ones who bring up the topic of pet insurance. And they're like, look, we're not licensed insurance agents, so we can't talk to you about coverage, but we know pets. And pets, it's not a matter of will they get sick, it's a matter of when they're going to get sick.
Yeah.
And you may know this or may not know, but if you get a puppy right now, over the next 12, 14 years, you're going to spend $20,000 in vet care to care of this animal.
Mhm.
Most people don't know that. And
Yeah.
so the vets educate the pet owners around this concept and say, look, and it's not like you spend the same amount every year. Most year you'll spend $300. Great, fine. And then suddenly, boom, $5,000 bill because your dog just ate something and now is having like giardia.
Yep.
Or your dog just fell off the couch and broke their toes. Or, whatever it is that they're going through. And then
Mm.
you face with an estimate, you're like, oh my God, this is going to cost me $5,000. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of friction for pet owners, a lot of friction for veterinarians, a lot of friction with the pets. And so that's where we step in as Pumpkin. We're like, we want to remove the friction that gets in the way of the pets getting the care that they deserve. And we want to enable the gold standard of care for pets,
Mhm.
enable veterinarians to do what they were designed to do, Vets got into this business because they love animals and they want to save life and they want to deliver the best care possible.
Yeah.
We're the partner who enables that. We remove the friction in the journey by providing the best coverage, by providing high annual limits, so that if you get an estimate for $2,000 or $10,000, we'll cover that. And the experience, we provide experience that supports the veterinarian and pet owners. We try to remove the friction that say, what we want you to do is you get to your vets, they show you an estimate, they say, hey, to treat Sam, it's going to cost $3,000. We want you to say, let's do whatever it takes, doc, because
Yeah.
I have Pumpkin. Like, that's the experience that we create. That's the
Mm.
journey. And as a result, you go online, if you Google us, you'll see we have the highest rating of any pet insurance in the US. So like
I love
5-star
it.
ratings all across the board is because of that experience that we've created.
It's
So to
incredible.
go back to your question, what's this onboarding journey? Most
Yep.
people do their research up front, but the veterinarian is the strongest and the best influencer you can think of. And so we get endorsement from that influencer to say, you should check out Pumpkin. It's one of the brands that we work with. It's not the only one, but it's one of the brands that we work with. It's one that we love the most. We can't tell you anything about the price and coverage, but go check it out yourself. Do your research. Here's information about it. Call them up. They'll answer your question, and then you get a quote from us, right? So
Mm.
it's a D2C model. You get the quote engine from us. We enroll you right away. Coverage usually kicks in within 2 weeks, and you're on that journey.
That's incredible. I mean, this journey is one of the most inspiring stories I've had in the podcast in a while. I would love, this is my last question here, but if you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to cheat here. Probably going to give you 2 or 3, right? Because I think
Yeah.
one is tough, and I'm sure your audience will appreciate that.
Sounds
I
good.
think there's a couple. One, the first one is, I'm a really big believer is, it starts with the problem. You gotta really be clear of what problem you're solving. Because I advise entrepreneurs, I was a mentor on some like incubator and accelerators. The biggest problem I see most of the time with first-time entrepreneurs is they have what I call a solution that's looking for a problem.
Mm.
And why do most startups fail? Most of the time is because product market fit. They don't have product market fit. And usually it's
Yeah.
tied to a lack of clarity on what is the problem you're solving and how do you go about identifying the hypothesis of what's the solution and removing the ones that are not the right one and the ones that turns out to be the right way to solve the problem. Right. So
Mm.
it's really around the problem definitions. For me, that's number one. The second one is, anybody, I really believe this, anybody can start a business. But the truth is, and I see this with the 3 companies I've started, once you sign your name on the dotted line, so I'm going to go and commit to do this, you're signing your life for 10 years. This is not a flavor of the month or 6 months journey or a year or 2. You really, if you really want to see this through, it's going to take 10 years. Right. And
Yeah.
so my point here is, anybody can start a business. Very few people have what it takes to finish a business.
Mm.
You got to have tremendous amount of grit and resilience, because it's going to be a roller coaster. I've built 3 companies. I think all 3 are really successful. I can tell you for sure, with every single one of them, I have been through what I would call a near-death experience. We almost
Yeah.
went under with every single business
Mm.
that I ran and I started. At one point, we were
Yeah.
like, I was like, this is it. We're done. We're going to be toast. But one of the strengths you have to have as an entrepreneur is like, you are not taking no for an answer. You are never, all you have to have this mentality, like, I'm just never going to give up. One of
Mm.
my rule of entrepreneurship is, you never run out of money. You just never run out of money. I almost ran out of money twice with
Mm.
2 of the business that I've done, but you just never. So as long as you have $1 in your bank account, you keep going and you keep fighting. And that's the way you're going to have to do the attitude, the mental
Mm.
grit that you need to have to power through challenges. So for me, that's number 2.
Yep.
And then number 3 is, you kind of have to be both. You have to be a great entrepreneur, but you also have to be a great manager, right? So you have to be a great
Mm.
leader, a great CEO. You have to inspire people. You have to be a good mentor, because it's all about people. Like me on my own, there's only so much I can do. I need a team around me, or I can't do anything on my own. Like you
Yeah.
quickly find your limit. Like, okay, as an entrepreneur, maybe the first 6 months I can get a lot of stuff myself, but then ultimately I need other people to help me on this journey to scale. Right.
Mm,
So it is all about people, and you have to really have a people first mentality. There's a great quote from the former CEO of Netscape that says, "We invest in the people first, the
mm,
product second, because that takes care of the profit." Right. And I think that's the philosophy that we have at Pumpkin is we're a people first company. We take care of our people first and foremost. We really focus on aligning people's personal purpose with the company mission and vision, and really
mm,
enabling the success of people through their journey, and really help them find their talent, because that will solve the product and the experience for the pet and the pet owners. And then
yeah.
ultimately, if we do that well, it'll fix the financial business that we obviously have to
Mm,
deliver eventually for our investors to, you know, give them the returns they're looking for.
for sure. That's incredible. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. And to listeners out there, make sure to check out Pumpkin at pumpkin.care.